In 2012, an open-world crime game launched that had everything: brutal combat, an incredible story, and a city full of life. It was GTA meets martial arts action. But despite all that, it never got the love it deserved. This game was almost canceled before release, and when it finally launched, it was completely overshadowed by bigger titles. No sequel, no second chance. But years later, fans still won't stop talking about it. That game? Sleeping Dogs. A crime drama set in a stunning Hong Kong open world, where you played an undercover cop balancing loyalty and betrayal. It should have been a massive hit, but instead, it faded into obscurity. So today, we're diving into why Sleeping Dogs deserved way more love, how it stood out from every other open-world game, and why so many fans are still hoping for a sequel that may never come. But before we talk about what made Sleeping Dogs so special, you need to hear the insane story of how this game was almost wiped from existence. Sleeping Dogs wasn't just an underrated game. It was almost a game that never existed at all. Originally, it wasn't even called Sleeping Dogs. It started as True Crime Hong Kong, the next entry in the True Crime series, which was supposed to compete with Grand Theft Auto. At the time, True Crime had a small but dedicated fanbase, and a game set in Hong Kong's underground crime world was something fresh for the genre. But there was a problem. Development was a mess. The game had already been in production for over 4 years, and Activision wasn't happy with the results. They thought the gameplay wasn't strong enough, the open world wasn't living up to expectations, and, most importantly, it wasn't shaping up to be a GTA killer. So in 2011, Activision made a brutal decision. They canceled the game outright. True Crime Hong Kong was officially dead. That could have been the end of it. But somehow, Sleeping Dogs got a second chance. Square Enix saw potential in the game. They believed that if the project was polished and rebranded, it could become a breakout hit. So they bought the publishing rights. But there was a catch. They didn't buy the True Crime name. This meant the game had to be completely rebranded into something new. That's when it was officially renamed Sleeping Dogs. But even after surviving cancellation, the game still had one big problem: timing. Sleeping Dogs launched in August 2012, right between some of the biggest gaming releases of the year. It had to compete with Far Cry 3, Assassin's Creed 3, and Borderlands 2. And if that wasn't bad enough, Grand Theft Auto 5 was already in development, meaning the gaming world was focused on Rockstar's next big thing. And because it wasn't part of a huge franchise like GTA or Assassin's Creed, it didn't get the massive marketing push it needed. Square Enix had high expectations, predicting that the game would sell 2 million copies in its first year. But when the numbers came in, it barely hit 1.5 million. To put that in perspective, GTA 5, which launched the following year, sold over 11 million copies on its first day. It wasn't a complete failure, but it wasn't the hit Square Enix was hoping for either. They did release a definitive edition of the game in 2014, bringing it to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. But instead of boosting interest, it just reminded people that there was never going to be a sequel. Just 1 year later, in 2015, United Front Games, the studio behind Sleeping Dogs, was shut down for good. And with that, any hope for a Sleeping Dogs 2 was completely gone. The crazy part? The developers had already been working on a sequel. Concepts for Sleeping Dogs 2 included an expanded open world, deeper undercover mechanics, and even co-op gameplay. But because the first game didn't perform well enough, the project was scrapped before it ever had a chance. It was one of the biggest missed opportunities in gaming. But despite being left behind, Sleeping Dogs was special. And up next, we're breaking down exactly what made it so great. Sleeping Dogs wasn't just another GTA clone. It did things no other open-world crime game was doing at the time, and in some ways, it still hasn't been topped. One of the biggest reasons for that? The combat. While most open-world games relied on shooting mechanics, Sleeping Dogs focused on hand-to-hand combat, and it was brutal. Inspired by classic Hong Kong action movies, the game featured an advanced martial arts system where you could chain combos, counter attacks, and use the environment to completely destroy your enemies. You weren't just punching and kicking. You were slamming heads into walls, throwing enemies into fish tanks, and using weapons like meat cleavers and crowbars in fights. It felt like a mix between Batman Arkham's combat system and a classic kung fu movie. And it wasn't just the fighting. The parkour system added another layer to movement. letting you chase enemies across rooftops and through tight alleyways with fluid animations. But the real game changer? The setting. Sleeping Dogs wasn't set in another American city, like most crime games. It took players to Hong Kong, and this wasn't just some generic version of the city, it was authentic. From the neon-lit streets to the chaotic night markets, the back alleys, the towering skyscrapers. Everything felt like it was ripped straight out of a Hong Kong crime film. The game fully embraced its setting, making sure even the smallest details felt real. You had street food vendors, NPCs speaking Cantonese, and a world that felt truly alive. It also had something that most open-world games at the time didn't: an actual story worth caring about. You played as Wei Shin, an undercover cop who infiltrates the triads. But unlike GTA, where you're always the criminal, Sleeping Dogs constantly forces you to balance between being a cop and being a gangster. Wei isn't just some cold-blooded killer. He's torn between loyalty to his duty and the friendships he forms with the triads. The deeper he goes, the more the lines start to blur. And that's where the story really shines. Most open-world crime games are power fantasies, where you rise up in the ranks and become the boss. But Sleeping Dogs had a deeper emotional pull. You weren't just taking over territory, you were losing yourself in the process. The voice acting played a huge role in making this work. Wei Shin was played by Will Yun Lee, who gave the character real depth and internal conflict. And the rest of the cast? Absolute legends. The game featured Hollywood-level performances from actors like Tom Wilkinson, Lucy Liu, and Emma Stone. And then there's the driving. Most open-world games have functional driving, but Sleeping Dogs went all in on making it fun. You had high-speed car chases, slow-mo shooting mechanics, and even the ability to jump from one car to another like something out of Fast and Furious. The gunplay was solid, but it was the cinematic moments that made it stand out. The game would throw you into John Woo-style action sequences, with slow-motion shootouts, explosions, and crazy set pieces that felt like they came straight from an action movie. Sleeping Dogs was packed with things to do. You could participate in illegal street races, fight in underground martial arts tournaments, take on side missions, and even go on dates, all while leveling up your character through 3 unique skill trees: Cop, Triad, and Face. The Cop skills made you better at takedowns and precision shooting. The Triad skills turned you into a brutal fighter, increasing your damage and unlocking special attacks. And the Face meter rewarded you for being a respected figure in the city, giving you access to exclusive bonuses and upgrades. It was an open-world RPG before open-world RPGs became the trend. But despite having all these incredible features, Sleeping Dogs never got the recognition it truly deserved. And up next, we're going to talk about why this game never got the success it should have, and how it was completely overshadowed by bigger franchises. Sleeping Dogs had everything: a stunning open world, brutal martial arts combat, an intense undercover cop storyline, and some of the most cinematic action in any open-world game. So why didn't it blow up like Grand Theft Auto, Assassin's Creed, or even Watch Dogs? Well, there's more than one reason. First, the marketing was a disaster. Square Enix picked up the game after Activision canceled it, but by the time Sleeping Dogs was ready for release, they didn't seem fully confident in it. It didn't get the same AAA marketing push that other major open-world games did. There weren't huge ad campaigns, constant TV commercials, or viral trailers like we saw with bigger titles. Instead, Sleeping Dogs was treated like a mid-tier release, which was a huge mistake. This game had AAA quality, but not AAA promotion. And when a new IP doesn't get that kind of marketing push, it's hard to stand out. And then there was the timing. August 2012 was a brutal month for competition. Sleeping Dogs had to go up against some of the biggest releases of the year. Far Cry 3 was making waves as an ambitious open-world FPS. Assassin's Creed 3 was dominating gaming discussions, and Borderlands 2 had an established fanbase ready to jump in. Meanwhile, Sleeping Dogs was a brand new IP with no built-in audience. And that's a problem because most gamers aren't willing to take a $60 risk on something they don't know, unless there's already huge hype behind it. But the biggest reason Sleeping Dogs never reached the top? The Grand Theft Auto effect. When a game like this comes out, people don't compare it to other open-world titles. They compare it directly to GTA. And that's a tough battle. Even though Sleeping Dogs was a completely different experience, most casual gamers saw the open-world crime setting and thought, why should I play this when I could just wait for GTA 5? And once Grand Theft Auto 5 launched in 2013, Sleeping Dogs was completely forgotten. To put things in perspective, GTA 5 sold over 11 million copies on its first day. Sleeping Dogs barely hit 1.5 million in its first year. It wasn't a failure, but it wasn't the massive hit Square Enix was hoping for either. And when a game doesn't hit those numbers, the publisher moves on. But the saddest part? A sequel was actually in development. Sleeping Dogs 2 was already planned, and the ideas for it were insane. The sequel was supposed to feature a larger open world spanning multiple cities, an advanced undercover cop system where your choices actually changed how the game played, and even co-op multiplayer, allowing players to take on missions together. This wasn't just going to be a sequel, it was an evolution of everything that made the first game great. But because the original didn't sell enough, the project was cancelled before it ever got off the ground. And just 1 year later, United Front Games, the studio behind Sleeping Dogs, shut down permanently. And that was it. Sleeping Dogs was gone. No sequel, no remaster, no revival. But despite everything, this game never truly disappeared. Because years later, fans are still keeping it alive. And up next, we're talking about how Sleeping Dogs has aged, why it still holds up today, and why it deserves a second chance. Sleeping Dogs may not have been a massive hit when it launched, but here's the thing, it still holds up today, and in some ways, it's even better now than when it first released. One of the biggest reasons for that is the combat. Even now, few open-world games have been able to match the brutality, flow, and impact of its hand-to-hand fighting. The Arkham-style counter system still feels smooth, but what really makes it special is how raw and violent the fights get. Slamming an enemy's head into a car door, flipping someone over a balcony, or using the environment to take down opponents. It all feels just as satisfying now as it did back in 2012. But it's not just the combat. The Hong Kong setting makes Sleeping Dogs feel fresh even today. While most open-world games focus on cities like Los Angeles or New York, there's still nothing else quite like Sleeping Dogs' version of Hong Kong. The neon-lit streets, the tight alleyways, the chaotic night markets. It's an open world that actually feels alive. And because it was made during the early days of the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 era, the game isn't bloated. Modern open-world games often throw in huge maps with filler content, tons of side quests that don't matter, repetitive objectives, and pointless busywork. But Sleeping Dogs kept things tight and focused. Every mission felt important, every part of the world had personality, and it never wasted the player's time. And thanks to the definitive edition which launched in 2014 for PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, the game still looks great today. It features improved textures, better lighting, and overall smoother performance. While the original had some rough edges, the remaster cleaned up the experience, making it easier than ever to jump back in. But what's really keeping Sleeping Dogs alive? The fans. For over a decade, people have been keeping this game alive through mods, community discussions, and constant requests for a sequel. It's become one of those games that never truly disappeared. It just quietly built a cult following. You'll still find Reddit threads, YouTube videos, and online discussions filled with players discovering it for the first time and realizing just how incredible it is. And it's not just nostalgia talking. Sleeping Dogs still feels better to play than some modern open-world games. Its hand-to-hand combat is still unmatched, its story is still gripping, and its world is still immersive. So the big question is, will we ever see a sequel? At this point, it seems unlikely. United Front Games was shut down, Square Enix has never hinted at reviving the series, and as time goes on, the chance of Sleeping Dogs 2 ever happening gets smaller. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. The gaming industry has seen plenty of long-lost franchises make a comeback. We've seen cult classic games like Alan Wake, Dead Space, and even System Shock get remakes and sequels years after they were forgotten. And with the way fans still refuse to let this game die, all it would take is the right studio, the right moment, and the right demand to make a comeback happen. And honestly, if any open-world game deserves another shot, it's Sleeping Dogs. If you've never played it, now's the perfect time to see why fans still won't stop talking about it. And if you have played it, then you already know, Sleeping Dogs deserved more.